What's going on, everybody? Welcome to another episode of Distillers Chat on Distilling 101. Let me send some of these links out and we can get started. I think we were last week, we mentioned maybe talking a little bit about wine making and brandy making tonight. If there's not going to be a lot of questions, or maybe around the questions, we can kind of chat about that and maybe deal with some questions on that. But let me get these links shared out and we can get into it. Hope everybody's having a good hump day. All right, let's see. So what's everybody got going on this week? I hate this dead air. I should talk, I guess, while I'm posting these links. Wish I could. Yeah, let's see if I can do this here. Let me see if I can. Yeah, split this page up here. Yeah, I can see everybody's comments while I share the links, because usually I've got only just one window open, but I guess I could split screen and have to. What's going on, Liz? So let me know how your uh, job interview went, brother. Let's see. I got an issue or two here. Just a second. Got some. Okay. Yeah, that's exciting, brother. Can't wait to see how you do. Hopefully you get the job. Hopefully they pay well. It's not easy though. It's tough work. Not easy. What's going on, Dick? Just sharing some links, brother. Trying to get the word out. I've updated my Facebook status. I guess I've gone from regular Facebook person to digital creator. So hopefully that'll let me maybe share more links, kind of broaden my scope a little bit, but we'll just have to see. I'm not optimistic. What's going on, Brian? What's up, Scott? So what's everybody got running? Ancestor, let's see comments. We're good, bro. Maybe if I were game streaming on there, I might go for something like that, but we're just a Q&A craft help site that just not really trying to reach a huge audience, just kind of trying to target our audience to the subject matter. I don't think there's a lot of, there's some interest on Kick. We've got some comments and and some followers from there, but we just putting it out there to have, so we can have a presence on most all the streaming sites. Well, so far I didn't get to any skids put on me, so that's a big plus. Usually by this point in time, I'm getting denied, so maybe this is helping. We'll see. Post it in a few more here and see what happens. Oh man, why is it not? Dang. Has y'all's messenger been messing up? What's going on, David? Has y'all's messenger been messing? Yeah, there we go. The skids. I knew that was coming. I knew it's too good to be true. Okay, maybe not. What's going on, Scott? How's it going, brother? So I saw something about sugar wash, running a sugar wash. Awesome. So how did the fermentation go? Did you have any issues with pH or any problems? What's going on, Morgan? Running the sugar wash. That's awesome, man. Just picked up some Oregon white oak. Can't wait to see how that does with the aging process. That's awesome. So you're gonna just saw it up. It helps to. Is this seasoned already or just fresh cut? Kiln dried or age seasoned. You know, there's different. Lot of talk out there about having kiln dried versus just like the age, stacked and air aged and seasoned, I guess you could say. Donnie, recipe. Now, what I would probably make like a 3 or 4 grain. Um, awesome, 4 years. That's excellent, Michael. That's best. That's premium, bro. Yeah, I just cut that up and char it. You can toast it first. Kind of get a toast on it in the oven. Um, just a medium toast, and then a char after that. And what's going on, Steve? And that'll definitely help bring out some good characteristics of the wood. I'd also recommend, maybe about 120 proof. I know a lot of or 110 to 20 in that range um, tend to pull more different flavors out as the proof goes up. You end up pulling different flavor notes out than with the lower proof. I know a lot of the big distilleries, they go in 125, 30, and but a lot of times they do that because of space, and they've got so much volume. It's an economic thing. So going in a lower proof will be a little bit different, bring out some different notes. Um, So, and you'll get different penetration. The higher your proof, the deeper penetration you're going to get in your wood. Um, but yeah, it's that's perfect. 4 years seasoned like that. Yeah, that's a lot of kiln dried doesn't do quite as well as naturally seasoned wood. So, all right, let's get to some questions. Derek, did you have any issues, brother, with it going? And how's it running? All right, Donnie, what recipe would I use if I was going to age in once used white oak barrel? I'd probably go with a good 3 or 4 grain recipe. Heavy corn. Like a whiskey or bourbon. I've posted in the militia group a file that's got the ratios of different grains for different distilleries, big time distilleries that, make some of the best whiskeys and bourbons in the world and stuff. And their grain bills are fairly commonly known, what ratios of grains they use. And, the secrets, I guess, in how they, cook and amylase and how they convert, but pretty much standard. But a lot of different ratios in the grain. So I go with a heavy corn. It depends. There's no right or wrong answer for this. Do you like rye? Or do you prefer a malt, more of a malty flavor than a spicy rye flavor? A little bit of both. Do you like a sweet wheated type bourbon, or more of a straight whiskey kind of guy? It really depends on what you like best, and what um, on what you prefer. So yeah, there's lots of options for you. Let me see what that file's called here in just a second. Um, it's called Mash Bills dash 2.0.2 PDF. And let's see, I can't share that in here that way. Let me see. I can maybe, let me see if I can do this. Let me find that real quickly and I will show you guys. If I can find it. It's always the fun part, finding files, because I've got them in several different places for several different topics. Okay. Let's see if I can find it in here. Mash bills. Here we go. Might take a second here. All right. Now here is slide one. If you want to, can everybody see this okay? Now, I know on your phones you may not be able to see it very well, but on your PCs you may be able to do a screen capture of this. But better yet, join the militia, and it's listed in the file section as mash-bills-2.0.2. So this right here will give you, Donnie, this will give you, let's see, Eagle Rare, this is small print for me even. Stag, let's see, Buffalo Trace. This is, and it breaks it down by distillery, kind of, by each Buffalo Trace, bourbon, mash bills. There's a few different ones for Buffalo Trace liquors, Heaven Hill liquors, with Elijah Craig. You'll see char levels also, which will help you, Michael. If you look on the very first, you'll see char levels 3 and 4. So you can see the different char levels that each of these use. Generally, it's a 3 or a 4. Um, but this will break down the corn, rye, wheat, barley. Um, and of course, you need to throw a few handfuls of oats in there too, just soften it up a bit. But that's slide 1. Here's slide 2 if you're capturing it. I think there's 3 slides. So I'll leave that up just a second for everybody to screen capture that if you can. And in Windows 11, if you look on your keyboard, you see that print screen at the very top, right up next to F12. If you click on mine, if you click print screen, it'll open up a whole new like a window, and it'll allow you to use your mouse to capture a certain specific area. Maybe if I move that out of the way, you could get the whole thing. Sorry, but it'll allow you to capture just that area, and it'll enlarge it, and it'll make it easier for you to see. And then here's slide 3. So quite a bit of info there, quite a bit of different grain bills. A lot of them are the same. You look at them, corn 75, rye 15, barley 10. It's fairly common. Um, corn 60, rye 35, barley 5. So those are all kind of rye heavy. And then you see some 75, 13, 12. So basically a lot of rye and barley balanced. You'll see some of the Buffalo Trace stuff, 75, 10 rye, 15 barley. And if you want to wheat it, if you want to substitute rye with wheat, if you like the Weller, Van Winkle and Pappy's and all that, you like, Maker's Mark, you like a sweeter, less spicy, you can substitute the rye and add wheat. I love wheat. I used to love wheat. So I like the sweeter whiskeys and bourbons. But I don't mind a little bit of rye. So, maybe, like a 5% here, 65, 5, 15, 15, you know. But there's no right or wrong answer. Dial in what you like, make your own ratio, and call it your own. That's the beauty of it. There's really no right or wrong answer for that. But do love using these charts, and all these charts that you see me use. If I use them in here, I'll always add it to the DIY page and to the militia page. So you can find it in both of those. So let's see down there. All right. So yeah, just you can bake in the oven. You can put your toast the wood to get a little bit of a toast color on it, and then char. And go with a good char. Don't just make it where it gets black. Make it where it gets like a gator's back. They call it like a gator's back, where you get some ridging and some, uh, basically looks like an alligator skin. Get some deep char to it, uh, and that'll help a lot. You'll like it. But you get a few uses out of it, and then pinch them. I use oak staves from the oak barrels themselves. Once used barrels, uh, they something happens to them when they open it up or roll it or something, they break, and they can't sell them as a full barrel to people that want to use them for wine or beer. So they just break the staves down. A lot of people do crafts and stuff with the staves, so they'll sell them just by the stave. And I've got a neighbor that does crafts and stuff with his, and he saves me up some little pieces, and I just toast those up, and on the outside, where it's kind of gray, I'll sand that or plane it or sand it down real good, and take the torch to it and char the shit out of that shit, man. And does real well. Might get a little bit of the flavor carry over from the last liquor that was in there, but is that cheating? But yeah, Donnie, any of those different grain bills. Now, as far as ratios go, I go about 2.5 pounds of grain per gallon of water, 2.5 to 3, depending on what I'm using. If it's corn heavy, I tend to go, you know, closer to 3. If I'm doing a lot of different grains and adding oats and a lot of wheat and barley, and if I'm adding maybe a little malt extract, I'll do about a 2.5. But about 2.5 to 3 pounds per gallon should get you a decent conversion. You know, if everything goes well and you follow your, you know, chart and you know, I always like using this chart for those that haven't seen it. You know, this is a really good chart to follow here. It gives you your temperatures. This is your saccharification range. This is the resting range when you want to kind of hold these temps. But this isn't talking about gelatinizing. When you're gelatinizing your corn, you know, we're way up here. You know, we're in the 190s. You know, we're not worried about where it says small granules here of corn. You know, that's for cornmeal that's been ground fairly well, you know, in the 190s to gelatinize that. But this is a gelatinization temp, you know, for corn. You can gelatinize corn at lower temperatures, you know, but it increases the time exponentially. So instead of 190 for an hour and a half, you know, 190 to 200, actually boiling. So, you know, you're going to pull it in at 210. It's going to cool. But at the end of the hour and a half, you need to have 190 plus, right? And if not, that's why you don't use all your water at once. So you're doing, let's just say, a 50-pound bag of corn. You're just going to do corn, for example, or whatever. You can substitute pounds of corn for other grains, but I'm going to keep it simple by just saying 50 pounds of corn, right? And 20 gallons of water. That's 2.5 pounds of grain for every gallon of water, right? So if I'll boil 20 gallons of water, get it rolling. But when I do the steeping process, and you can boil it in the bags if you have a false bottom on your cooker, you can boil it in the bag and, you know, start gelatinizing that way, and getting it going that way in your boiling bag if you like using the bags. You know, a lot of the beer makers, you know, tend to use the bags and they enjoy, you know, doing it that way because that's what they're kind of used to. But if not, you know, you can use the steeping method. It's tough, you know, to cook. Uh, a lot of people, especially when you first get started, it's real easy to scorch. And if you don't stir it up well, and if you don't have the right burner, if you have the, you know, temp too high, or the burner's focusing all the heat in one spot, or you have really thin, you know, a really thin aluminum pot and it kind of heats up in one spot really, you know, really hot. All these things kind of contribute to scorching, and that's one of your biggest enemies, man, because, you know, you can't fix a scorched, you know, a scorched cook. So if you scorch it and it's pretty bad, just, you know, it's chicken feed, man. Just pour it out, give it to the chickens, and, you know, clean out your pot as best you can and try again. But to avoid that, a lot of people steep, and when you pour in that boiling water, 210 to, you know, 5 to 210 degrees, it's rolling boil. If you have like a cooler that's insulated or a barrel that you can insulate, you can get like a 55 plastic drum, cut the lid out to fit maybe a 35 or a 32 or something like that that can sit down inside of it. And you can use your spray foam, you know, that you use, the expandable foam, spray all around that, kind of make you an insulated, you know, masher. So, and you can ferment in it, yeah. And but mashing and gelatinizing and doing all that in it definitely it helps hold the temp. And but you like use 15 gallons out of the 20 and put all your corn in there, keep it stirring, and it gets really thick. And when it gets real thick, it's gelatinizing. And that's basically your starches freeing themselves from the corn itself. So you're leaching and hydrolyzing. You're getting all the corn starches out, and once you do that, then you can begin the conversion process. So gelatinizing the corn is getting all the sugars out of the corn and turn them into a kind of a gel. Once you do that, then you can, but in the process, back to the heating, as you're gelatinizing, if your temps drop a little bit low, you can add that extra 5 gallons in there to keep your temps, in this higher range here. So you only have to do an hour and a half. You can do it down in here, but it's like 4 or 5 hours. You can do it down here, but it's like, all day. And it's just not, you don't want to, it's just a waste of time. It's a lot of time and it's a pain in the ass. So, yeah, if you can put it in an insulated and let it go for that. And I'll get to your questions in just a second. I'm sorry, but I want to explain everything as we go. So, but anyway, adding that and maintaining that temp. But here's all the different barley. What temp? That's not a malted barley. That's just regular barley malt is a different temp. But adding your high temp amylase to thin it out, and then letting it cool naturally. To where you can add some of these other grains. And follow this chart, and it'll definitely help you a lot. But if you can hold this temperature here, regardless of what you're doing, from 145 to 155, hold that temp for about an hour as it cools down. And if you're using this insulated fermenter, it's gonna stay that temp. Trust me, you'll get plenty of rest periods because it takes forever for it to cool down, right? That's one of the complaints a lot of people have. Says great, it holds temp well for the cook times and stuff, but it's like tomorrow before you're going to be able to run, because it does hold that heat and hold that temp in, and that's fine. It works out well. So take your time, don't rush anything, but if you want to, you can drop a chiller in there once you get past your hour here at this rest. You can drop the chiller in to get it back down to temps where you can add your glucoamylase and let that start working. I'd like to ask about that post that is now gone early this morning. Should we be worried? I'm not sure what you're talking about, brother. Please enlighten me. I haven't been on all day, so I have no idea what it is, Scott. But definitely, you roused my curiosity. I got to know, bro. I made a 10-gallon wash with 20 pounds sugar, and it seems to be stuck at 1065. But my bubbler's still bubbling. If it's bubbling, it ain't stuck, brother. It will slow down. You need to check your pH. Definitely on the sugar washes, the pH crashes a lot because you in that type of fermentation, your fermentation process generally creates a little bit more uh, organic acids than typical. It's fast, it's furious generally. So pH is always a concern. So keeping watch on that pH and trying to keep it, and I shouldn't say keep it close to 5.2. Start at 5.2. As it progresses, it's going to continue to drop because of these organic acids that are made. And as it drops, keep an eye on it. I use the oyster shells. We've talked about that a lot in here to help buffer. It won't raise pH when you throw it in there, but it prevents the pH from getting too low, if you follow me. So, but once it gets to the low threes, maybe start to concern. But if it's in the twos, you definitely want to add a little baking soda or pickling lime, better yet, pickling lime to raise your pH. Pickling lime will raise pH pretty quickly, and it's effective. Um, doesn't seem to stress yeast as much as baking soda does. The baking soda, of course, has sodium in it, which the yeast don't like the sodium, and the oxygenation that it creates when you do it helps. It makes your yeast go into breeding mode again instead of eating mode. So that's kind of an issue as well. So that's why we try to add those crushed oyster shells right at the very beginning. Get a couple big handfuls for your 10-gallon wash. Big old handful like that should be fine, tied up in a cheese bag. I boil them first. You can get them at the feed store, boil them up, get them dried out, and you can reuse them, rinse them out each time and reuse them. Or if you got like a sour mash going on or something like that, you can just leave them in there, and they'll slowly dissolve as the acids dissolve them. What happens is the pH is stable, and as it drops, it'll become more acidic, and as it becomes more acidic, it'll start eating away at that calcium carbonate, and it just help neutralize itself. So it doesn't raise your pH; it just prevents it from going low. If you can follow me there. Yeah, I'd say maybe the kiln dry makes it too tight, to where it doesn't, it's not porous enough, because you do want to have it, some porosity, so you can get, some penetration into the wood to get the bleach those tannins and some of the character of the woods out. So um, I'm guessing maybe kiln kind of tightens them up too much, but they definitely prefer the air dried, and 4 years is great. Excellent stuff. You should be really happy with the results you get from it. I have a sour mash, been giving me hell. pH dropped it up. Adding baking soda got pH way high. Anytime that happens, Morgan, if you have some back set, and if you can save some back set, that back set's really acidic. So anytime that you want to lower it, you can add some back set in there, which is adding kind of some flavor too, and it's acidic. So but the last thing you want to do is get in a battle of pH, adding the back set and then the baking soda and then the back set, because you just really stress everything out like that. So trick to a good sour mash is to make sure that you your run all the way down into your sweet water. Okay, so take some extra time, but that back set that you're adding, you don't want a lot of alcohol in it, because that's going to kill your yeast off, and that's going to kill your yeast bed, your nutrients. It's just going to make it all nutrients. It's not going to have any active yeast. You're going to have to continually add yeast, and it's just going to be, you're going to end up having too much. You're going to have to take it out. Don't want to have to do that. You want to be able to reuse that yeast and that yeast bed, and as long as you follow a few steps, that you can help maintain that. When you get done with your run and you've run it all the way down and you've got that hot back set right, go ahead and add the amount of sugar that you normally would add into that back set. Stir it up, right, and add that into, your let it cool. For sure, because you don't want that heat killing yeast either. So you add your sugar while it's hot, let it cool, add that to your sour mash, and then get your gravity reading, your pH reading, and you can add water to help increase your volume to lower the gravity. If your gravity is a little bit too high, you get too much sugars in there. Make sure you're doing it at the right temperature. You do the adjustment right for the greetings on your triple scale. So make sure you balance that out, so you got your hydrometer in there, you're measuring the sugar, content of the sour mash. You got your pH. Oh wow, my pH is low, my sugar's high. So adding some water to it will help lower that gravity some to more normal 1080 or whatever, and will help also bring your pH up without having to do the baking soda thing. But definitely go with the crushed oyster shells in there, and that'll help. It'll help the pH from getting really acidic. It doesn't buffer it. I mean, it buffers it, but it doesn't boost pH. It just buffers it from getting low. So that they're really excellent for that. What's going on, Richard? Wait a minute. I don't think I finished reading all that and didn't. And so baking soda, took out 5 gallons, added water, sugar, made new yeast starter. Um, Started back up, but pH is below 5. Below 5 is not a problem, Morgan. It's going to get low, so below 5 is not a problem. A lot of people say 5.2. Don't get fixed on this 5.2 and think my mash, needs to stay at 5.2 the whole time. It doesn't. It won't. You don't want to necessarily do that, because it's going to naturally drop. It's natural for the fermentation process to make organic acids. So you've got acetic acid. There's several acids that are being created at the same time in there. Um, so that's a natural process. Now, what you don't want it getting too low, like in the twos, because your yeast isn't really designed for that. Most of the yeast are pretty good from the threes up into seven, so they're good from 3 to 7, but you don't want to get below 3. Three, when you get close to 3, it's starting to stress, right? You stress the yeast and you're going to start getting off flavors, and you're going to be asking, why does my mash smell like puke? Why am I getting this, that, and that's because of, a lot of factors, but bacteria build up, and stressed yeast creating bad flavors off flavors um, definitely can help create that in the metabolic process when your yeast is metabolizing. If it gets stressed, it can give off flavors, and that's not what we want, especially if you're making wine and beer. You can kind of distill some of those bad flavors off and correct it somewhat. Then you can put it on age it and even erase it even more, and make it taste like a bottom shelf liquor. But that's not what we're striving for. So yeah, I may make a short little guide if I can make a note and remind myself. Maybe make a short guide on sour mash step by step, how I do it, and kind of what I just said, but it's easier to read it than to remember what I say and to rewind. And so, yeah, I'll do that and make it, because it seems like a pretty popular, and it's a really good economic way to make decent corn liquor without having to go through the grain cooking process every single time. Of course, nothing's better than cooking those grains every single time. But if you're wanting a good cheap alternative with a little less work, and who doesn't want that, right? The sour mash fits the bill. That's basically why they started doing it. It's a very economic way. They hated throwing all those grains out every time, and it's like a waste. And you're like, damn, that's a lot of every time we're wasting all those grains, and so they started reusing them, and hey, it makes a good drink. And most of the stuff you drink today is blended with some sour mash to a point. They use it to cut their whiskey. Once used 2 to 5 gallon barrels. That's a good question. I talked to Phil, Billy, and Wes up there. They run into a lot of barrel deals. Of course, Wes makes those barrels now, so he's less apt to look. But it's not a real common barrel size for commercial production. So most of the 2 to 5 gallon barrels that you see are geared towards home hobbyists and home distillers. Not a lot of craft distillers using 2 to 5s. They're using 10, 15s and on up. Most of them, once they get to a mid level, they're going to go ahead and try to use the full size barrel. But some of them still use the small ones to get a faster turnaround and do the fast aging thing. And a lot of the craft distillers that don't have a big name, big bottle on the shelf, kind of cut some corners to speed up the process, because when you start a business like that, and you're a startup, you don't have a 10-year bourbon to offer, unless you want to buy some and resell it. A lot of people do that too. um, a little MGP or something like that you can blend with your own and call your own and put out there. But so they don't have a lot of aged stuff to put on the market right off the bat, right? So that's why it's good to kind of market your shine, maybe make some neutral spirits while you've got barrels, in the back aging. So for the first 3 or 4 years, you're going to have to, rely on moonshine sales and, uh, maybe vodka sales, and maybe make some gins, because these are all things that really don't require an aging process. So you can kind of, give you time to age some barrels, because it's hard to get in the bourbon business starting out as a bourbon. I'm gonna start my distillery and I'm gonna be a bourbon maker. Because a lot of people do that and they soon find out, wait, we're gonna have to wait 4 years. We gotta have rick houses. We gotta have barrels. We're gonna have to fill these barrels. We're gonna have to wait. What are we gonna do in the meantime? That's when they start buying, MGP from somebody else and start putting their label on it until they can, you know, have their own. So it's tough to find them, man. It is. It's tough to find them cheap and good, and not once used. Even tougher. But I'd say there's a lot out there, but you got to be careful, because a lot of these barrels might be played out, because after a few uses, their efficacy drops rather quickly. So after 3, 4, or 5 uses, unless you can take the head off and go in there and scrape it and re-char it, it's going to be pretty tough to get the same effectiveness out of it. So, but yeah, the smaller barrels do the age a lot quicker, but they're not as good as the big barrels, but it's a lot quicker for somebody that wants something in months instead of years. Yeah, definitely the way to go for sure. And the smaller the barrel, the less time it takes, unless it's like the bad mow or the sand mows, and those theirs going to take you a little bit longer. What is the best yeast when using Bloody Butcher corn? There's no right answer for this. There's so many different yeasts out there. A lot of people would swear up down, the Kveki yeasts are definitely the best. Other people are going to say, no, just a regular old 80's all you need. Some people are going to say, man, bread yeast is where it's at. People have been using it forever and it's the best. And I've used it for 40 years and it's wonderful. Some people are going to be like, go to Firm Solutions, get a specific whiskey yeast like the FSI 927s, and they've got several different ones, specific whiskey yeast. Some people are going to say, oh, just get that angel yeast. You don't have to get the yellow label angel yeast. You don't have to worry about cooking, doing all this, that, and the other. You can just throw it all in there and let it go and forget about it. Come back a month later and it's ready to go, man. You don't have to fool with all that stuff, and it's a lot easier. So, but we're going to experiment with that. I'm afraid. I'm worried. I don't think that I'm going to do an even test though. I'm going to do some just regular yellow dent, 100% corn, and we use liquid high temp amylase and glucose. I'm not going to use any malts or anything else. I'm going to make a straight corn liquor using the yellow label with one 50-pound bag, 20 gallons of water, and then I'm going to do the gelatinization and cooking and amylase and all that in another barrel, and we're going to do a side-by-side test and check flavors, speed, the rate at which it ferments, conversions, yield, when it comes time to distill. So this summer, gonna try to find time to do that. And I need to get over to Buc-ee's to get some good cheap yellow dent, man. I heard they have like 50-pound bags for $8 over there, so $8.50 or something like that. So I'm gonna have to make a little drive to Buc-ee's and get about 5 or 6 bags of corn. Peaches per gallon. Well, I've got quite a few recipes for that, but these charts are fairly close. This is how much sugars your peach is kind of in the middle, so you're getting about 8.7 grams per 100 grams of fruit. So let's see how this. So peaches, 3 to 6 pounds per gallon. And if you have really sweet peaches, you're going to be closer to here. If you've got some of those hard as rock, hard to chop, solid, baseball feeling peaches, you're going to be closer to 6. So there's a pretty good play in that. But this is for winemaking. So I generally like following these. Some people think they're a little fruit heavy. But and the ranges are quite extreme, but so are fruits, So when you start looking at peaches, not all peaches are going to be 8.7 grams. That's kind of an average, so, and it's in the middle of the run. So, but those charts also in the list page in the DIY. But those two charts are a good place to start. But then we get right back to, you gotta use that hydrometer. So we're going to start with 3 to 6. So let's just say we're going to do 5 pounds per gallon. So we get everything all mashed, and 5 pounds per gallon of water. We've got our 20 um, 20 gallons of water and 100 pounds of peaches, right? So then it starts to then you start realizing, wait, that's a lot of freaking peaches, man. That's a lot of money. And it is, making wines and brandies the way you're supposed to it's pretty expensive. People tend to, and there's nothing wrong, but people tend to kind of cut back way on the fruit and start adding a lot of sugar to replace, a lot of the fruit. So, but when you do that, it's not going to be a true brandy, and but it's going to be good. It's still good unless you go just make a, 1 peach per gallon, and make a sugar shine with a couple of peaches in there. That's not going to be all that great, and it's not going to be bad, but it's not going to be what you're expecting. So, but yeah, it's expensive to do a lot of wines and brandies, which is why, you see so many people, once they really get into it and start loving it, they start looking for sources of free fruit or discounted fruits. And that's when a lot of these fruit sellers that are, sell damaged fruits and fruits that are on their way out, and they don't want to take it to the dumpster, is kind of in between. It's not nice enough for the, high end store, but it's still edible, right? And they don't want to throw it in the dumpster. You got some of those fruit places that sell stuff for pennies on the dollar. Just they hate waste, and they, it's pretty efficient. So if you can find those places, there's quite a few of them out there. They it really is effective, and price wise, it'll save you a lot of money. Definitely save you a lot of money in the long run. It's just really expensive to make fruits like that. It's, or wine with the proper amount of fruits. It's really expensive. All right, I'm getting way behind here. What's going on, Jeff? What's going on, Roy? What's up, brother? I'm sorry I'm behind, guys. What's up, Dan? Ritter of Damnation. What's on, brother? What's going on? Hell yeah, we all love a good drink, brother. And I think, speaking of which, I think it's about time. Take a little shot. What do y'all think? Oh, tonight we are drinking 135 proof wheated Bloody Butcher sour mash. I agree, Rude. Yeah, 2 pounds is for a sugar wash that's just going to run through like a make a neutral out of it. It's about that. I think that gives you like a 1080, 1090, kind of in that range, and which for a sugar wash is kind of, okay. A lot of people don't like going into the 1080s, 90s, but if you're just going to make a good neutral and you've got a good column, and you got some bubble plates and stuff, and you can make a pretty good neutral out of that. So, and it's pretty efficient, but yeah, it is a little bit on the heavy side. But it's a rule, there's 2 to 1. A lot of people do that, but I agree. I think it's a little bit on the heavy side, but if you're going to make a neutral out of it, it's not too bad. Yeah, yeah, it's about pretty close. And if you get good sweet ones, maybe not as much, but yeah, for a good brandy, and use your hydrometer. That's what you got that hydrometer for. So let your hydrometer make your recipe. A lot of people ask about recipes for this and that and this and that with different fruits and stuff, but it's the same process. It's just how much peach are you going to add to a given amount of water that you need for your distiller. So if you've got a 20-gallon pot that's actually 25, but you can do 20 gallons at a time, then you're going to start with like 22 gallons of fruit juice and water combined, um, and then break all that down. And by the time you're ready to run, you're going to end up with about 20 usable, 18 to 20 usable. And but use your hydrometer and let that hydrometer and kind of create your recipe and how much sugar you need to add to get it to that level. If your fruits aren't sweet enough, you can always add more fruit. I like using the concentrated frozen stuff. So if you can get some concentrated juice mix to add with that to get a little bit more flavor, concentrated, flavors, that's always good too. Just be careful of what preservatives and stuff they have in it. But actually, I've seen let's see, 2 pounds of sugar. Let me get I think it's like a 1080. Yeah, yeah. 2 pounds of sugar to 1 gallon of water is a 1080, which gives you pretty close to 12. Um, I don't have all this. I used to have all this in my head. It's about 12, I guess, 10.2. So yeah, 1080 is about 10. So 10.6, 10.2, I'm getting here to 13. So yeah, 10 to 13. So yeah, we've got some yeast that, like the EC1118 or something like that, that's going to be able to ferment that dry, bro. So but 1080 it's a decent, it's a sugar shine. It is what it is. It's going to be hot. Um, but at the same time, it'll finish dry if you got a good yeast. But again, you really need to add that buffer in there so your pH doesn't crash. That's the biggest issue with it, and one reason why they don't finish out real quickly and easily a lot of times is because the pH crash. So you get those eggshells or the oyster shells in there. I don't use eggshells so much. It takes so much, and bacteria and germs and shit. Fuck all that. Get your oyster shells. I mean, eggshells is good for plants and stuff, if you want to do it for that. But for oysters, shells, you can get them at the feed supply stores. I think the 45-pound bags, like $15. It's cheap as shit. Everybody uses them for chickens to keep their, calcium levels up for the eggs, to keep the eggs good and hard. Um, and it's good. I boil mine to get the salts and any salts that may be in there out and any impurities and anything like that killed off, and then let it dry out, and it works great. It helps buffer. It doesn't affect flavor that I can tell any, but you just a bunch in there. It helps neutralize it. As the acids start building up, it just buffers. They start, eating into the calcium carbonate, and it just buffers themselves out. So it works quite well. But yeah, 1080 is about a 10 to 12%. ABV, and yeah, the EC 1118, and most yeast are going to do that. Maybe a lot of bread yeast not, but um, but it is going to be hot for sure, and you don't want to really. Hey, nobody's too old to play, brother. I still play video games, man. I'm 62 and I get in there and kick everybody's ass. Have a lot of fun, man. That's a lot of fun. Never too old to play, bro. Okay, now we're getting a little weird. What's up, brother? Cheers, my friend. Um, it's kind of an old wise tale. It was kind of used during Prohibition to scare a lot of people. There is a bit of truth to it. I mean, there is some science to back it, but it would be it to concentrate the four shots to the level that it would be to blind you would almost be an intentional, concentration of fours. We throw them away, so we tend to not concentrate them. I know in some third world countries they try to redo everything and reuse everything and reconcentrate and try not to get rid of anything. So I've heard some issues that they just kept running them over and over and over again, and basically they were concentrating four shots. So if you did that, yeah, you potentially could. I think a lot of it came from too back in the day. A lot of metals were used that weren't like galvanized metals that had a lot of bad metal ions in there. Lead, a lot of lead in some of the stuff that was used. Um, just regular iron, which had a lot of metal ions in that as well, which is actually the reason people burned alcohol back then. It wasn't to test for lead. Lead burns very pale whitish blue, and you can't see it in a ethanol flame at all because it's very pale. Um, and methanol, and it's not to measure to see if you've got methanol in there, because methanol and ethanol both burn blue, the same color blue pretty much. So all that's bullshit. But what it was picking up on is back in the old days, a lot of moonshiners used 55-gallon oil drums, which was just basically metal, and they'd clean the insides out as best they could, and they would use those as a boiler, right? And over time, they rust really quickly because they're not made for water; they're made for oil, and so they rust rather quickly over time. And a lot of that rust and metal ions getting off into the metal can cause some hearing issues and blindness and stuff like that. So it was probably a combination of a lot of things, but most importantly, it was a wives' tale, and it would be hard pressed to get that much fours unless you try to concentrate them. So tough to do, tough to do, and something we really don't worry about because we get rid of those four shots and we don't keep running them. I don't. So they get dumped. They're grass cleaner, glass cleaner, or grass killer, you know, charcoal starter. There's a lot of yeah, it's pretty much a wives' tale, but there is some fact and basis in it. I mean, I read just a few years ago, some maybe in India or in Indonesia, they were making some shine type home distillation kind of thing, backwoods, back alley distillations, and I think they were concentrating and just kept running them over and over and over again, and just sold them pretty much as four shots. And yeah, so some people were getting blindness, and actually some may have died, I think. Man, you're funny, playtime. uh all right, finally a normal question. Seems the highest proof I can get out of my keg pot is 160. Absolutely normal. That's a perfectly typical number. Actually a little on the high side, so If probably what kind of pot you running? Are you running your keg? Are you running a thumper or just straight out of the keg into the condenser? But yeah, 160 is perfectly normal. I like to have mine come off a little less than that, unless I'm doing something kind of in between, like a rum or something like that. About 160, yeah, that's perfectly normal, bro. Yep. All right, let's see. All right, now you got me rewinded. I missed something. What did Richard say? I might miss it. Oh, for the 2 to 5 gallon. Do you think they have those, or is they do that small barrel? What's going on, Hellbilly? What's up, brother? Oh, that's good. Good to remember. 1861 distillery. Thank you, Jeff. I appreciate that, man. I'm not doing this to try to make money or anything like that. I've never made the first penny off the streams I've done for years. I'm just trying to educate, man, and I'm putting the word out there, trying to attract people from all different stream platforms. I know Kick is pretty much a game platform with a lot of hot tub chicks and all this type stuff. I'm on there. I do some gaming and stuff, but and I watch a lot of my friends stream. I watch Ghost on their stream, COD and stuff, and some other people, but and Z Butters and a few others, that are friends that game on there. But we just tried to, bring people in from all over, attract people from all different walks of life. That people enjoy doing this, from doctors, lawyers, scientists, all the way down to unemployed, nothing better to do. But, so retirees, every walk of life, we've got electricians, we've got plumbers, we've got, you know, line workers, we've got everybody, everybody loves to drink. And what better way than to make your own, man? It's a great hobby. It's a lot of fun, and I'm just trying to help keep the hobby safe and make it enjoyable. And I don't want people going out there investing $2,000 or $3,000 in all this equipment stuff, getting all these copper steels and expensive stuff, and then not get the help they need, not make the product that they want, and then get mad and sell everything off. Oh, they leave it outside. Damn, it might be malted. Is it malted? Bucky's malted corn. Yeah. Yeah, I have to check that. If it's outside, I ain't buying it. Forget about it. Unless they get a fresh load in or something. Or if it's covered at least, that is out in the rain. That's crazy. What's going on in Idaho? Beautiful place. What's up, Chris? What's going on, my brother? Yeah, it does. It helps a lot. It's a must. I like it. Must, pun intended, for those that know. 110 bucks for 50 pounds of corn. Must have been some heirloom. Yeah, that heirloom stuff gets a little expensive. But yeah, it is worth it. It makes some really good stuff, brother. Especially that blue, man. I want to try the Oaxacan green. I want to try some of that. I've not been able to get any of that. 5 pounds of corn. Damn, or were you talking about maybe some fruits? Oh, maybe we're talking about peaches. Since you say wine and you name it, probably I was gonna say that's a lot of corn. It is syrupy peaches, ready to go. Yeah, they fit pretty tight, bro. They are a little bit on the small side. Talk to Phil, Billy. He can hook you up, bro. We got 4X. We got you covered. Can I make a mead with Reese cups? Absolutely. I mean, there's the sky's the limit, bros. As long as you don't have a lot of stuff in there that's going to kill your yeast off, as long as there's sugars, you can make alcohol. You know, it's just a matter of how good it's going to taste and how well it's going to ferment, and you know. But yeah, I mean, they make peanut butter, and they already do that basically. I wouldn't call it a mead. Are you talking about just adding honey to it? Um, but yeah, I mean, there's as long as it's got sugars, as long as it doesn't have a lot of preservatives and stuff that's going to kill your yeast off, man, the sky's the limit. You know, anything sweet can be converted. I know there's a lot of peanut butter shine. That's pretty popular. Peanut butter banana is pretty popular. Not heard of a lot of people using chocolate, but there's some people that use the cacao nibs. I'm not sure I'm saying that cacao, whatever, nibs, and have some success with those. There's also some chocolate concentrates that you can use. I think they have some on Amazon that I've heard get really good results. So that'd probably be a good place to start instead of trying to use a regular milk chocolate. Use milk chocolate, you're probably going to get a lacto, bacillus infection, which isn't a bad thing, but it'll be different. Make it creamy. But yeah, you can absolutely just use your hydrometer again. Just always goes to the hydrometer. You can do pretty much whatever you want. Drop that hydrometer in there, measure your sugars, and as long as you're a 105.5 or something like that, 105.0 at least, make it worth your time to 108.0 or 90, depending on what you're running, which would be a little on the high side. But if you're doing like a neutral or something like that, okay. But yeah, just use your hydrometers to measure the amount of sugars that you need, and and question is, what kind of sugars are you going to add? You're going to use dextrose, you're going to use regular table sugar, you're going to use corn syrup. There's so many different sugars that you can use. Vanillas, and what's that? What's that one I like to use? Shit, what's the name of that stuff? Damn it, my mind's like, be easy for me. Walk over here and look. I'll be right back. Hey, what's that sugar we get at the dollar store? I can't think the damn name of it either. Huh? I'm not sure. Go check it for me. Go check it for me. It's right there next to the kitchen door on that box. I'll have to check it out. It's upstairs, but it's really good. It's not real expensive. You can find it in some of the dollar stores. I think I was finding 4-pound bags for like $1.25 or something like that, which is a really good deal. Hopefully somebody can chime in and tell me. No, it's not dextrose. It's one of those more raw, kind of like a panela, but a little wider than a panela. It comes in a green Morena. Yeah, Morena. That's it. That's the one. And it's real good too. It does real well. The cane sugar, Morena, dextrose, all those are real good. Now she'll be mad. I'll send her upstairs for nothing. That's good for you. That's a great question, Mark. There is a difference. I have to say, if it's done right, yeah, you can tell a difference if it's done right. But if you've got a setup where it's putting out like 180 proof, it's probably not going to have as much distinctiveness, I guess you could say, than if you're putting out 130 to 60 range. Morena, Zolka. Zolka. Morena Zolka, I think it's a brand name. Thank you, babe. My little berry crusher. So it will. The blue corns, have a really good sweetness, where like the Bloody Butchers, have a real earthy, oily. So there's definitely some unique characteristics from each that are gonna, yeah, definitely you can taste it. But that's in a white lightning, right? Okay. And you're gonna taste it aged, but after you go through the aging process, the distinction kind of gets lost with a lot of the flavors from the barrel itself. But it does make that base flavor unique enough to where you can tell a difference, and it makes a premium product. Is it worth it? That's the $1,000,000 question, and everybody's going to have a different answer. Some people are going to say hell to the no. Regular, white lightning, hardcore drinkers are going to be like, hell no, it's not that much difference. It's not worth it. Good old white yeller dent. But it does. There is some distinct flavors that you can get out of each you can. Anybody know who makes the white oak lids for mason jars without the shellac? Yeah, the Hillbilly Glass Barrels. They do the lids. And you definitely don't want shellac. Use mineral oil on the outside if you want to keep it sealed. On the outside, you use a little mineral oil. That's food grade, but a food grade mineral oil. But yeah, no shellac. We were talking about that, last week and stuff. I see a lot of people using boat paddles and stirring spoons and a lot of these other things wood with shellac on it, and all of a sudden you see shiny handle and it stops about halfway down and it's dull. It's like, man, you just ate the shellac off your damn, boat paddle, man. Put that in a canoe and get some stainless, bro. I like my little drill bit with the mud mixer, man. That's my stirring. It's like a bunch of stirring by hand for an hour, man. Those days are long gone for this old man. How much what, brother? I'm not sure. Peaches, I think. I think he was talking about peaches when he was talking about 5 pounds. For grains, about 2.5 to 3 pounds per gallon of grains is a pretty good starting point. And of course, really, it depends on how good a conversion you get. So, I mean, if you start with 2.5 and get a shitty conversion, it's not going to be as good as if you started with 3 and didn't get a great conversion, right? Because you're going to have more starches in 3 to break down. And so yeah, but just learning the process and getting it gelatinized real good, and once you do it a few times and get successful at it, unless you get lazy, it's pretty easy to replicate. Yeah. What's going on, brother? Missouri. Awesome, man. Missouri's one of the great states in the United States that it's legal to make your own moonshine at home. So we definitely welcome our Missouri brethren. I'm right next door in Kentucky, so great to have you with us. But yeah, Missouri is definitely a forward state, very, very forward thinking. They've got it to where you can home distill legally there now, and it's awesome. You can do up to 100 gallons a year per person in the household. Up if you have more than one person over 21 that can legally drink, you can go up to 200, but that's the max. So if you have 3 people over 21, you still maxed at 200. But yeah, great state of Missouri, show me state. What's up, Dave? Yes, it has been a bit, Texas. Dan, how's it going, brother? Good to see you back in here. Yeah, we got liquor, but we can't talk about selling it or anything on here, brother. But we can definitely talk about helping people make it and learn to make your own. But yeah, we because of the rules with Facebook and with YouTube and all that, we can't talk about selling anything or anything of that nature at all. We promote. I promote corn sales and still sales and things like that. If I can find certain people who have great deals or hard to find products or things like that, you know. But yeah, we just home hobby distiller helper. But it's great to have everybody in here. And being from Missouri, man, you're gonna start making your own, man. What's up, Mitch? Oh, let's see. Did you just do that? Not well, 10 minutes ago. They have to just take more shots. I didn't see Mark Morgan in here calling shots. He'll probably come in here a little bit later. Cheers, everybody. Good stuff. Good stuff. High proof. Man, that's when you kill all the bacteria in your mouth, how it kind of what's that thrush you get in the thrush? I think drinking this high proof is causing thrush. I'm killing all the good bacteria in my mouth because it's so high proof. Yeah, man, I'm getting liquored up. Making some good blackberry. I've got some blackberry that's been aging in there as a wine that I need to run and make some room. I got to do some watermelon, so I got to get my fermenters freed up. So I'm going to have to run some blackberry here shortly, using jar rigs or infusers or just straight brandy, brother. Tell you, if you haven't tried those jar rigs or the small infusers, those work really well. Putting some good flavors back in. It'll definitely boost your brandy flavors. Um, well, a grain. Fellow brother from Missouri. Awesome. Great to have some Missouri people in here. Spread the word for all the Missourians because it's legal there now. I can show you straight coming from the Missouri.gov website that talks. I've heard a lot of people, we have these arguments on the web. No, you can't. It's nationally illegal, federal law. Okay, right. So is marijuana, still federally illegal, but you can go to the damn store and buy it in a lot of states. So, what's up with that? So, kind of moonshine and home distilling is going to be a lot like the marijuana industry, where it's still federally illegal, but they're really not going to delve into it. I can't really speak for them because they'll delve into it whenever the hell they feel like it. So I'm definitely not going to speak for them. And I know some people that have been popped and here recently. So I'm not saying they're not going to, and everybody said, "Oh, man, Santa said I could," yeah, but it's as long as you're just making it home for your home use, and you're not out there selling it, you're not out there promoting it, you're not making a lot of videos of you running it and doing all this, and getting a lot of attention using big steels. They see somebody with a 5, 10, 15 gallon pot, that's chicken feed, but they see somebody with a big, 100, 200, 300 gallon, pot running it. Yeah, they're going to be a little eye opener, and then they may show an interest. But Brian, you found the right place. You and your buddy both there. Great to have the Missourians in there. If you got any buddies that you want to start getting into the hobby, uh, how fast? Okay, so you can mash out in a day. Do all your conversions and everything. Get all that done in day one. And day two, add your yeast and get it started. And within 4 days, on an average to good grain uh, conversion and fermentation, uh, conversion 1 day, fermentation 4 or 5 days. So within a week, you can be ready to run. Right now, that depends on all the factors coming in. Well, you got to have the right temperature, ambient temperature. The temperature of your mash has to be proper for the yeast that you're using. Lower temperatures generally cause longer fermentations, but high temperatures, you don't want to take any shortcuts. And that's the biggest mistake you can make in wine making and beer making and distilling is try to rush things. So you let nature take its course, and generally, if all the different factors are all right and everything's in line, and then you can easily ferment a grain meal in 4 days. Depending on the yeast, but if everything's right, yeah. So within a week, you can be ready to run. And running, depending on the steel again, can take anywhere from 4 to 6 hours for a hobby amount, up to 10, 12 if you want to run it all the way out for, sour mashing, run your tails out and everything. So it just depends on how hard you run the steel, the size of steel, the size of the plumbing on your steel. There's so many things, that can have an effect on that. We can go over all that too. Uh, but within a week and a half, you could be drinking your own liquor, man. You could be drinking your own corn liquor. So we can go over a lot of the things that you're going to need if you know, want to ask the question, what all equipment, join the Moonshine Militia, and DIY shining stuff on Facebook. And we can get you started. We got a lot of people. We got a lot of steel builders that are trusted, because, you don't want to be, some of these copper steels, you get up in the 20, 30 gallon range, we're talking thousands of dollars, right? So, or if you want to start out with a 15-gallon keg stainless steel, that's 35, $40. So that's so we're talking about 35, 40 to, 2 or 3 thousand. So, it's just according to what you want. But we can break down everything that you're going to need, um, have to have, and then there's a lot of other things that would be nice to have. But yeah, we can get you started and give you a list of stuff that you're going to need to pick up, where you can pick it up, best prices, and get you going. 8 pound cracked corn, pureed peaches, converted sugar, and a six. Oh, and a six. How many gallons of water with all that? Oh, 6 gallons of water, I'm guessing. Yeah, okay, tops, yeah. Yeah, Morena's cane sugar. Yeah. Zolka, all those are basically from cane. Vanilla, all those. It's just a more raw, less refined sugar. in my opinion, what is the best size to start out with when learning, and what's the best way to learn heads, hearts, and tails? Um, I would say no less than 10, Jake. I mean, it's a great question for beginners place like this, and something we talk about. I wouldn't go any less than 10. A lot of people will argue, I love my little 5, it's small, but here's my take on it. The difference between 5 and 10, of course, is you get twice as much out of a 10 than a 5. Do you do twice as much work? No, you don't do hardly any more work to do a 10 gallon than you do a 5. Yeah, you have more money invested in corn. You have a little bit longer waiting for the water to boil. You'll use a little bit more sugar and a little bit more amylase, whatever it takes to, if you don't get that good conversion, to bump it up. But essentially, time wise, you're going to be doing about the same to run it out. If the plumbing is stepped up incrementally, uh, about the same time to run, not really that much difference in run time. So, the difference between 5 and 10 is you get twice as much with spending very little extra money and very little extra time. So make it worth your time. Um, I think the Vever football steels, the 15 to the 18, 13 to 18 and a half gallon ones are perfect. They're plenty big enough. Um, they have, they're very convertible with the ferrule on the top, so you can take the little football off. You can add your little column. You can do a lot of different things. You can deflag with them. They're just so versatile, and you can use them for brandies and whiskeys with just that football head on there. Stuff it full of copper mesh, and that'll take place of the copper and removing any sulfites and things of that nature. So I think a great place to start would either be a keg, and you can start with just a plain keg. Take the spear out and clean it out real good inside, and just use that. Or you can start adding ferrules into the sides and the bottom to put heating elements in there. If you want to go electric, you can do a 4-inch ferrule on the top to give you some room to clean it out if you want a little bit more room for cleaning out, and a little bit bigger, larger hole to pour, your stuff in and out and dump it. Um, so, there's a lot of modifications that you can do to the keg, and it's a good, inexpensive way to start. But you're going to have to buy a head or a column or something to go on that. There's quite a few places if you join the militia and DIY. We've got quite a few people that make all that stuff. If you want to buy it, if you want to make your own, they'll actually teach you and tell you how to make your own. And a lot of them have videos and stuff on how to do it, so you can watch that. We got some really trustworthy, excellent people that we recommend, because there's been a lot of people that's lost a lot of money with people that've taken their money and never delivered, and we weed those out. So the guys that we have that you order from, yeah, you can rest assured that you're going to get it. May take a while. They're pretty busy as a result of being trustworthy. A lot of them will be honest with you and say, look, I'm 6 to 8 months out, like North Georgia. I'm 6 to 8 months out. Phil Billy can make you that, or, Ace Custom Copper can make you that, or, we just got so many, Appalachian Plateau or Wayne at Ozark. We've got so many great builders that can do pretty much anything you want. So it's a great resource for information, and for people that can get you started in the right direction. As far as learning hearts and tails, it comes down to um, getting used to it. Basically, we go by a little guide like this. So in this guide, and this is a general guide. Don't take this as facts, because this guide is somewhat flawed in that you see 4 shots here in the red. Well, technically, you'll get 4 shots all the way throughout the run. And see this green stuff right here? That's tails. You're going to get those all the way throughout the run. So technically, the red should probably be a little higher here, with less here, less here, less here, less here, just dots. Maybe just a few red dots by the time you get to here. But there is still some there. But this is just a generalization. So as far as, and it depends on the mash. So like a brandy mash, a fruit mash, or something that you use pectic enzymes in, or have a lot of cell um, potential for wood and cellulose to kind of get fermented and converted as well. You tend to have a little bit more four shots and heads in those than like a sugar wash, which has hardly any. So this will change, but this is just a general rule. Another way people have been doing it is 30, 40, 30. So 30% here, 40% here, 30% here. Some people say 50 milliliters per gallon. There's so many different things, but really what you have to learn is to go slow, because the faster you go, the more you tend to blend these numbers. This becomes a little less here and a little bit more here, and same here. So, but this is a good little general guide about how everything comes off. When you start out, you'll have a lot more heads, four shots, but you're going to have a little bit more ethanol than actually what it shows here. They found, but this is just a guide to show you generally what happens. So as it goes, you get less and less until you get in your hearts, and then you're tasting less of these acetyl acetates and acetones and a lot of the higher volatile alcohols and propanols and all that. Um, they give all flavors, but mostly acetone, ethyl acetates, that you're going to be tasting and smelling here, like your nail polish remover they talk about. But as it runs, you're going to be able to put your fingers in there and smell it, and know when you're getting into this range between these two a little bit more. Personally, from here over, I throw away. So there is some ethanol in there. I don't care. I'm not that desperate to get that amount of alcohol where I'm going to go through the extreme of putting this flavor back into a second distillation. So everything from here over is weed killer. I use it to clean metals, before you weld or anything. Clean your metals up is good. Grass killers, glass cleaners. I use it to clean my glasses. I keep a little jar here of heads just for cleaning my glasses. It makes great countertop cleaners, but it will take a lot of your sealants off if you have like a marble top or something like that. But if you got Formica or something like that, it's really good for cleaning and sanitizing. But from like right here to right here, I'll save those, and I'll throw those in my tails. Earlier, I was talking about the guys from India and stuff that were concentrating, and they were saving this stuff right here. That's right. They were saving all this shit right here. There's very little ethanol. See, there's your ethanol. Very little ethanol in there. And I keep thinking y'all can see my mouse when I point. But there's very little ethanol in like 1, 2, and 3. And so you're really not going to get a lot of that regardless of how many times you distill it. So, but they're taking that right there and they're separating it and they're throwing it into a bucket, right? And they redistill that, trying to get this little bit of ethanol out of number 3 or number 4, and they end up running it over and over and over again until they get all the ethanol out, and it's just pure 4s and heads, and then they keep concentrating 4s and they keep adding more to it, more to it, more to it. So eventually they even cook off the heads and it's just basically 4s, and then it can become a problem. But you'll be able to tell the smell, and when you get down into here, it gets a little musty smelling, Jacob. So you can tell if you smelled like wet cardboard. A lot of people use that, and that, I've never really thought about it, but that's a good musty, kind of smell. But you'll learn, and make small cuts, with small stills like we got. There's no use in doing, half-gallon jars at a time. Use pints or quarts at the most. I use pints best when you're first starting out learning. Use pints until you get to your hearts. And then when you're in your hearts, then you can use your quarts again. And then when you start smelling a little bit off, go back to pints. And then when you're way down into your tails and your proof's dropping below 80 and it's starting to get a little Sometimes it'll cloud up on you. That's when you just collect it in a bucket and use it, save that for your next run, because you can definitely rerun those tails. And like from jar looks like 15 to 19 or 18. Look at the amount of ethanol in jar 15 to 19. There's a lot of good ethanol in there. And that green, that tails, that's a little bit of water and other congeners, and those really don't give the as much bad flavor as the blue will over here. But also in these blues, in your heads, you do have certain esters that if you can isolate those when they come off, they'll have some pretty interesting sweetness, and they can esterify over time into some pretty good flavors. But that's advanced. Right now, we just want to cut hearts out and keep it simple. But once you learn the basics, then we can take into intermediate and advanced. But for now, a good, 30, 40, 30. Um, yep. How do you know that, man? How would you know? That's just weeded Bloody Butcher that I'm drinking right now. But yeah, and something about that Bloody Butcher that we found that's interesting. It's got a lot of people complain about it having a. Let me know if y'all can hear this fan. I'm worried that y'all can hear this. I get a little bit warm down here. But when you run it the first time, it's earthy. It has a really oily, earthy flavor that it puts a lot of people off. You either like it or you don't. And I think it's great to use as a corn in addition to other corns, because it does have that earthiness, or you can get a little earthy, and you can use the blue to get a little sweetness, and maybe the green to get some interesting flavors out of, and the whites to get some interesting sweetness. So if you combine the two, it just means depth, right? So you get some oily depth. But a lot of people don't like it because of it oily. But when you sour mash it, you get past a lot of that oiliness and earthiness early on. So in your first generation or two, once you get past that, um, you don't have much at all, to worry about. And it's actually a good flavor. This is good stuff here. So yeah, just those things you learn as you go. But yeah, Jacob, we can get you started out, brother. Um, I think either a keg or a good bever football steel is an excellent start. Uh, get those, and then we can work on what's next. I can work up a little list. I should have that. I'm going to start make another note. Sour mash steps. And I may have some video stuff to go along with that when I do it. And what are we talking about here? Oh, I was just saying. Oh, yeah, equipment, chemicals, etc. to get started. So yeah, you're gonna have to. It's not a lot of expense, but there's a few things that having on hand is going to be essential. And yeah, we'll get you a list, Jacob. Come this Saturday. We're not going to be streaming this Saturday. We got something going on that I'm not going to be able to be on this weekend. So next Wednesday, I will have this ready, and come back, Jacob, and we can go over, and I can give you a list of the essential things that you need to go along with this, 13 or 15 gallon bever. Um, I know firsthand because I have one, and give you a list of things that you need, and go over it, because it's going to be helpful to everybody, because everybody has the same questions. And we got a lot of people in here from Missouri and stuff that's gonna, is definitely gonna want to start getting started, because it's legal for them. Um, so yeah, definitely. Yeah, 392. I think Walmart. Are you getting that? I think Walmart might be a little cheaper than that. But yeah, it was a great deal, Richard. I was going in there buying cases at a time, and I would go in there like every other week. Did you get a new batch in yet? And finally, I guess they caught on, or they just weren't able to get it anymore. It's Dollar Tree, I think it was. But yeah, man, I was going in there and I was like, can I order some? It was cheap as hell, man. But I did. I bought several cases. I loaded up, and now that a few times I've been in there, they don't even have it anymore. So I think, yeah, I think it's caught on, and they just sold out of their supply, or Zolka is, up in their game. But I'm pretty sure. Let me check Walmart price real quick for you. Let's see, Walmart, 8 pounds for $8.47. So that's about $4.20 for 4 pounds. So yeah, that's about the same. I thought it was a little cheaper than $1 a pound still. $1 a pound's not bad. I mean, table sugar that you buy is pretty much 70 cents a pound. So um, for the good quality that this is, the good flavors, and the yeast definitely like it a little better than like a table sugar. Why is it doing that? Okay. Wow. Yeah, Zolka's actually 392. Not too bad. So I did the price on like 40-pound bags of like just the regular table sugar, and I think I'm paying like 70 cents a pound for that. And then I was getting the Zolka for so freaking cheap, man. It was like 50 cents, 40 cents a pound or something. Yeah. Do I think a hot plate? Um, so if you go with a keg steel, you're not going to be able, of course, use a hot plate. For a stovetop. The 18 and a half gallon bever that I've got that I use during the winter times inside, uh, I've got like a smooth top, and it's like the infrared. It's not induction heat. It's not the induction, but it's the infrared. So it's got like the red little glowing elements out of there. You don't want your stove to cycle, and the heat plates and some stoves, especially the old electric coil type stove, those tend to cycle on and off, cycle on and off, on and off, on and off to help maintain the temperature. You don't want that. You want a constant on, and you want to be able to adjust that constant on to the way you want it. So the infrared, I got an old Frigidaire stove. I've been here like 15 years. It was old when I moved in here. Um, it's got the 5 elements, the warmer in the middle, the 18 and a half covers like 3 of those elements sitting on there, and it's not too much weight for it. I've had it full, and I've used it many, 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 many times. I'm not saying it won't break your glass smooth top, but I've done it on 2 different stoves with the glass tops, the infrared type like that. And the red, once I get up to like 8 into 9, which is high, the red stays on all the time, so it doesn't cycle. You don't want that cycling, because you don't want temperature changes as you're distilling, because that will cause smearing, and it will cause that your distillation, you won't get this fluid less. So you'll get more here, and then down, up and down, and it'll get carried forward, and these get carried to, you just, yeah, you don't want that. So yeah, that's, you definitely want to get away from that. But yeah, both of those work. You can get elements that go into the side, um, and run some elements. A lot of places just use water heater elements. You can also get the stainless steel elements that seem to work a little better if you get some particles in there, um, and different acidities. I guess some of those water heater ones are made pretty much for water, and pretty much a neutral pH fluid. And I guess if you get some of the more acidic stuff in there, it might cause them to break down a little quicker, whereas the stainless ones are probably going to last you a little longer. But you can, use a PID or a SCID and lots of different types to energize your elements, to keep those going. It's pretty interesting. There's a lot of people that make those for you if you want to go that route. But just to keep it simple, the 13 on your regular stove is going to be fine. If you got like a microwave and a fan above that, you just pull your stove out away from underneath all that, so it gives you room for, the big pot, your big, football and all that. You got a sink hopefully close by you can get your water from, or a reservoir in the floor. You can dump to your sink if you need to dump hot water. And I generally just keep jugs of you know gallon jugs of water frozen, and I just drop them in my reservoir. You could drop them in your sink if you want to use your sink as a reservoir, and just kind of maintain a cool enough temp to get a good condensation. So you know um, that works fine. But I know a lot of people that use heat plates, and they seem to have a perfectly you know good good success rate using them. Just make sure that it can handle the weight, and it's not going to be too small for a big pot, which you run into pretty quickly, easily. But I would just use your stove. What type of stove do you have, Jacob? And gas stoves work great. So if you can keep them balanced on a gas stove, yeah. Yep. The lids I wanted to try out to age corn whiskey. That's going to be Hillbilly Glass Barrels, and yeah, just look him up. He's in the Moonshine Militia, so check him out. Actually, he's on here a lot. Uh, he jumps in here from time to time, and he'll chime in. But yeah, look up Hillbilly Glass Barrels. They make the wood lids that fits in your jars, and he can help you out. Or if you want to just use the staves in a regular jar, both work out just fine. Um, 6 one, half dozen another. They both work quite well. But for simplicity, I just use the staves and stuff. But I like what he's done with the jar lids and stuff. It's a great idea, and a lot of people like it and use them. And they work just fine, and they're pretty quick. All right, wait a minute now. Oh, all right, let me go down through here and say hello. Mario, we don't talk about that in here, man. Yeah, I don't know if you were on here just a minute ago when I was talking about it. Best place to sell moonshine is at a liquor store and have a commercial license. And again, we don't. Yeah. Anyway, somebody was talking something earlier, and who was it that said something about the news today? I wanted to get my curious as pigs. I've been thinking about that since it was said. All right, who said it? Who said it? Pass up. Come on, man. Where was that? What was said earlier today, though? I want to know what the news was. Oh, it's funny. All right, I'm scrolling back. I gotta find it. I didn't say Joseph jumped in and said hello. Hey, Joseph. Sorry, brother. I didn't mean to miss you. I scroll up and down trying to find something. Now I'm scrolling back looking for, somebody said something about the news today and they're got my curiosity aroused. Who was it? All right, I'll have to scroll through that later on when it gets quiet. Where we at? Where we at? Yeah, we don't talk about Mario. We don't talk about it, brother, because Facebook will kick us if we talk about anything to do with selling anything. We don't promote that at all. YouTube and Facebook both will kick us. Um, I'd say the best place to get it be the liquor store, the easiest place to get it. Probably if you don't have anybody that you know that makes it, um, probably be best to get it at a liquor store than to go asking on the street. But best of all, Mario, make it yourself, brother. It's easy. It's a lot of fun. What's up, Toby? What's going on, Derek? What you up to, Toby? Yeah, is that what it takes to get those buttons back in there? I know what you're talking about. What are you running? Awesome. Yeah, that's the way I used to do it, man. I used to do it on wood. It's not easy. Yeah, it's been legal in Missouri for a while. All right, let's see what Texas Stan's got going on here. I got to scroll back and see what his last, something about lead. I'm not following what he's saying though. Oh, he's making some good blackberry. Awesome. Yeah. Oh, that's a reply to the jar rigs. Yeah, get you some jar rigs, brother. They help a lot. They add a lot of flavor back. Yeah, start at fours. It's fun. It's easy, uh, and it's real easy to cook your mashes just because you can do it with regular cookware. Uh, but it is a lot of work for a little bit of reward. You're not getting a lot. So it's like, wow, I did all that. And then, in one night you drink what it took a week to make. And it's like, fuck, I've got to increase this. So, yeah, you want to start probably with a 10. I wouldn't recommend anything less than a 10. Keg, 15, or a Bever, the 13 or the 18 and a halfs are excellent. Those are kegs. Great place to start. If you have money and if you can afford it, a good copper pot. I mean, this is the way to go. It's the Cadillac. It's the caviar, but not everybody can do that, and most people just getting their feet wet, starting the hobby, um, tend to want to just get in cheap, to see if they'll like it, see if it something that they can do, and that's where we come in. We want to make sure that it's an enjoyable hobby, that you don't, go through all the fuck ups I did, 50 years ago when I started. I made every mistake. I mean, I did it long before the internet was there. I had nobody to go to. So, I learned the hard way, and it's a hard way to go. And I guess if I wasn't an alcoholic when I was young, I probably would have given up. But me and my buddies like to drink. So we drank that scorched liquor and loved it. Tastes like shit. It was horrible, the worst ever. Yeah, yeah. You'll learn your cuts by smelling and feeling and tasting. I don't do a lot of tasting early on because you don't want those four shots and those heads. Once once that shit gets in your mouth, it's really hard to not taste it again. So yeah, you don't want to do that. Done a lot of sugar and some grain, but looking to do your first fruit mash. All right, watermelon. That's probably the hardest thing to start with, brother. Um, 2 to 3 per gallon might be a little light. Let's see my frick chart here. I can't even see this. Let me maximize this page. Let me get rid of this so I can see down here. I think it just says melon, so it's like 3 per gallon, 3 pounds per gallon of melon. I do think watermelon is a little bit, well, it's right above peaches here, so let's check it with this other chart. And let's see, peaches and watermelons. Yeah, so yeah, melon. It's going to be about the same as peach, to be honest with you. So let's go back to here. Peach 3 to 6, melon 3. Yeah, I'd say 4 pounds per gallon. Yeah, be a pretty good place to start. But there's a lot of different, the thing about watermelon is so much water in it, so you're not going to be adding water. So you're going to be using more of the fruit per se because you don't have that concentrated. But if you can get like some of this vintners winemaking, they make a watermelon concentrate for winemaking to make a watermelon wine. That will help a lot. It's expensive. You can also infuse with like the snow cone watermelon flavor stuff syrup. That helps. I mean, anything you can do to add that watermelon flavor, um, you know, and you'll get mixed results. It's just on what you want, what you expect out of it. For a true brandy, you're not going to get a lot of watermelon carryover. It's really, really tough to get that watermelon carryover. It's a tough brandy to make, and that's probably why you're seeing a lot of us talking about that right now. Is because that's what we're doing the competition on at Farm to Bottle. So everybody's talking about their watermelon, but peach is probably peach and apple are probably two of the best fruits to start with. Peach probably the best to get flavor carryover and cost and everything, especially if you live in an area where you get a lot of apples or peaches for free. And I got to figure out where I scroll down to. That messed everything up when I enlarged my page. But yeah, watermelon 3 or 4, EC 1118, pectic enzyme. Sounds great, brother. I mean, but again, you're not going to be adding a lot of water because your watermelon has a lot of water. So if you add water to that, I'm afraid you're going to water it down. But use your hydrometer. Just use the watermelon juice and the pulp and everything. Use your enzymes. Don't do anything with the yeast yet, but take all your watermelon you get and maybe a little bit of water to keep it thin, and then maybe a gallon for every 4 pounds, if that. And check your hydrometer after the enzymes finish working the next day. Give them 24 hours, and it'll be real thin. It'll thin it out considerably. You won't have all that mush. It's amazing how well those work. But check your gravity and see, and then you can adjust with some sugars, or morena or something if you want to bring your gravity up a little bit to make it worth it. EC 1118 is perfect, yeast or yeast to use with that. A little bit of nutrients to go along with it, a little dead yeast or something. If you got some sour mash, just pull a little bit out of that grain bed, it'll work fine. You can throw in a little if you got some bran flakes, you can grind those up and throw them in there. If you got a little malted barley, you can throw that in there to just feed, just as a nutrient, not for a grain, but it's a great food as well. Interesting, Jeff. I've never thought about that, but yeah. So what do you got? A 2,000 watt? Yeah, that would work fine. Just anything to regulate it. That what you don't want is something that cycles on and off. You just want constant energy flow, and you can adjust it, and it's just a constant flow. You don't want something that cycles on and off, on and off. So yeah, absolutely love enzymes. Definitely, I mean, enzymes are a must. A lot of people mistake enzymes as a chemical and it's something not natural, and they think it's a chemical that you're adding. Enzymes are perfectly natural. It's in our saliva. It's in our stomachs. It's something that they source these from sweet potatoes and other natural sources. So absolutely, enzymes are a must. Yeah, you can do winter wheat. It's malted. It gets a little less grassy and it's a little easier to work with if you malt it first and dry. It's really hard to grind, but yeah, malt it and let it dry, and then crack it up, or like a roll or smashed, or. But yeah, wheat works great. But alone, I've never done it by itself. But in 10% to a mash bill, yeah, it adds some sweetness, grassy sweetness. Yeah, let me get back, Scoop. Hope you're still here, brother. I would love to know what the hell was early on. Did I miss Alan Bishop saying hello? What's up, brother? Yeah, we're going to have Alan on here in, I think, the first or second week of July. We're going to have Alan on here to jump in and chat. Always great to have Alan on. And I'm sorry I missed him. I didn't see it until I scrolled back. I swear to God that wasn't there. I think it adds this shit back in as it goes. I did not see that. I doubt he's very busy. I doubt he's still on. But if you are, sorry, brother. And I can't wait till July to have you on. That's a wealth of knowledge right there. Man, a great guy. Man, I can't believe I missed that. I'm on, Scoot. Where's he at? Well, if somebody can find it, let me know, because it sounded like something I need to know about. And I hate spending a lot of time scrolling back looking. So Jeff, if somebody can scroll back and find that, Lisa's not here right now, so she had already had it answered, but I can't find it. I don't want to neglect everybody else. I'll try to figure out what it was. But yeah, back to router control, something like that would be excellent. I ain't gonna hush. What's up, Mama B? Those that don't know, as Jason and Mama B, both master distillers from the television show. Jason won. Mama B got second with her poteen. I saw her video. Her and Amanda were doing a little sippy sip, and it was pretty cool. But wait a minute. I just might have a little bit of that Mama B poteen left. I have to do a little sippy sip. 110 proof. Mama B poteen. It is good. Very good flavor. Interesting. Very good. Mama B makes some good shine, y'all. Well, I appreciate it, brother. I tell you what, you all keep getting in here and saying that. I won't need to. I'll just have a 200 or 300 of you promoters in here. 5 pounds per gallon. What are we talking about, Tammy? Are you talking about the watermelon? Just winter wheat. I've never done just wheat. In fact, I've never done just a single malt at all. The only grain I've done alone is corn. I do use a lot of winter wheat and barley, but I don't. I've never done just a wheat. it can get gummy as fuck. There are some enzymes that you can use that'll help clear the gumminess and the gluten. If I wasn't so old and forgetful, I could tell you what that is, but I was just reading about that the other fucking day. Man, it pissed me off. Don't get old. Refuse to get old. I was just reading about this the other day. It's not glutenase. Glutenase will, but that's not the one I was reading about. And it's not a protein. It was a specific enzyme. And it was something new. A mind's a terrible thing to waste, man. So don't get old. I'm not seeing it on the quick little. I'll have to look. There's an article I was reading. It was cutting edge stuff. It's something. It was a new type of enzyme. Maybe this is it here. Yeah, I think this is it's a synthetic enzyme that digests gluten effectively. That is still in the trials. Okay, that explains it. Yeah, but it was something new, very recent. And I think they're doing it for people that have issues with glutens, but it also works well in a mash with a lot of that haze and stuff. Yeah, I can't remember what that was, but it was a pretty interesting read. Winter wheat. Yeah, I get a lot of my winter wheat's cheap. How much you paying for yours? I'm getting like 50-pound bags for 12 bucks. What's going on, Mark? What's up, brother? 9:59. How far? I'm not too far behind. That's just 20 minutes. Hopefully he's still there. Strawberry. Yeah, I make a pretty good strawberry too, Tim. I've got a strawberry wine that I made, and it went kind of dry. Actually, it went drier than I wanted it to, and it's not sweet at all, but it had a good carbonation to it, and it's like a champagne at this point. And so I decided to keep it that way. It's a very dry strawberry champagne, and people love it. But you have to love the dry. It's pucker up. It's just like you coughing dust. It's dry, but it's really good. Low calorie, not a lot of sugars, and the gals that I trade it to for bottles, they love it, and they like the fact that it doesn't have a lot of calories, and they like the strawberry flavor without all the sweet, and it's got a lot of alcohol in it, so they like that too. Ding, ding, that's all I need to hear. Yeah, we'll be back. I know you said that a minute ago. Probably about the time but somebody look and see what Cooter or whoever that was said something. Somebody said something. I need to know I need to find out what that was. I wish the hell they wouldn't do it. That's if you want to troll me, that's a good way to do it. Make me think. You can come in here and cut me down and make fun of me in one ear out the other. But if you want to troll me, say, man, did you hear the latest? And then don't say anything. Don't fucking tear me up. But I like new info. I like to keep abreast of what's going on. Just got your proofing parrot? Yeah, it's nice to have, man. I still use my jars, I've gotten it down. I've done it so long though. I've gotten it down to science. I know pretty much when things are going to happen before I even proof each jar, but I'll do proof each jar. I've got a step by step, but yeah, the proofing periods that come right off your uh, condenser, those are really nice. They make some that tie into the tri clamps that mount right on it, and just that's real nice. But yeah, proofing periods are great to have. It's very handy, very handy. Scott Creel, okay, I'll talk to him. I'll talk to Scott. That's great, Timmy. Yeah, we're gonna do the raffle. Shiner Sam, I met him in passing. I never had the opportunity to get to know him. He passed away before I really had the opportunity to get to know him. But he knew a lot of people he was loved. I mean, he was a great guy, very easygoing, a lot like me. He's easygoing, you know, happy go lucky guy. Everybody liked him. He was a good dude. I didn't get a chance to know him real well. I saw him, in the groups and stuff, commenting and stuff. We met in passing at one of the festivals and stuff, but everybody's busy and got shit going on, and I never had the opportunity to sit down and talk to him. But would like to. It's kind of like Cyrus, we've been in groups and never had the opportunity to sit down and chat. That's another dude I'd like to get to know. But yeah, I regret not getting to know him better. But yeah, his wife's having some issues and having to go through. I guess he died intestate. He didn't have a will, probate, so everything's in probate. And it's a little bit of an issue there, trying not to get into too much of the personal matters, but she could use some help. She's having a really tough time and kind of trying to choke her out, money wise, trying to play the lawyer game, lawyer up and drain all your money to where you don't fight it anymore and you just give up. And hopefully we can help her where she doesn't have to give up. Yeah, I've done a lot of brandies lately too, Timmy. That's what I've been kind of focusing on for the last few years. I used to be the grain man, and I was everything grain for a long, many 40 plus, 45 plus years, always grain. But no, 35. But I guess the last 10, I've been doing a lot more brandies and wines and getting into wine more. As you get older, drinking this hard stuff, you have a few shots a night's okay, but it gets really tough once you start drinking a lot. It's hard on the old mind. So you start drinking wines and stuff, and man, I love drink. When I was younger, I didn't drink a lot of wine. I drank like Boone's Farm and sweet stuff, and that's just because the girls liked it too. So whatever they liked, we liked, right? So I drank a little bit then, but nowadays I like it. I like the wine. Okay, brother. Well, I've got several here to look through. And I will say, in the groups and stuff, be careful what you say, and we talk about on here, don't we don't talk about selling, and we don't talk about big steals, and we don't talk about mass production, and this is a hobby, that this is kind of a do at home, have fun hobby kind of thing. Never do we promote selling it. The dream of most of us, we start out the hobby just as a curiosity, right? So we get started and love it, enjoy the science of it, and So yeah, in response to this, there's been a couple of people in the community in the last few weeks that have been paid some visits. Um, be careful what you post. You know, I used to enjoy loving watching people running their stuff, and don't post you running stuff. I hate saying that because I love watching it, and we run these groups and we encourage people. And I know everybody wants to brag, show it dripping off there, but that's evidence. You know, if you want to show your beer mash, that's a beer. That's legal. So as a mash, show your mash, strut your mash. You know, just lift your shirt and show your mash all you want. But and your wines, you know, your must, so your must, you know, and because that's wine and beer, that's perfectly legal. But when it comes to showing it boiling and dripping off, be cautious about that because you know that's evidence. You know, beer and wine they can't do shit for you posting your beer mash and your wine mash. But once you show that video of it dripping, then it raises some eyebrows, you know, because that could be used in evidence in court, you know, and especially if it shows you there next to it pointing, but still they can't prove that wasn't water and you were just pulling the wool over everybody's eyes, right? You know, it's just water you're distilling. You were cleaning the still, right? So, you know, that may, you know, be that, but they still can use that to get a warrant to come in and pay you a little visit or enough to at least pay a visit, have a little sit down. Um, so that's probably what he was talking about, the news from earlier. I haven't heard anything about it until now, and Jeff and Richard kind of like me. I haven't been on the groups all day. I've been busy all day. I have so much going on. Trying to retire and kind of pushing away from my old job and going through a lot of changes and got so much shit to do. I'm getting old and I got so much honeydew list is just getting bigger and bigger and bigger. And there's so much it's getting overwhelming for an old man. I don't know how I'm gonna get it all done before I die. Yeah, you only use 10%, so just burn out the other 90%. What are we talking about, brother? Yep, the brandies or the fruits. Oh yeah. Well, you can pasteurize the wine to kill the yeast, um, for sure. A lot of times people will use potassium metabisulfate. I'm sure you're familiar with that if you're a winemaker and brandy maker, but Campton tablets, it's the same thing as a Campton tablet, except it's a lot cheaper to buy as potassium metabisulfate than it is as a Campton tab. Those are pre-measured little tablets. For those that don't know, it's a chemical that's used to kill yeast. Um, and to somebody like us that distill, it's like, why would you ever want to kill the yeast, man? You want to keep those yeast till they work until they're dry. But in winemaking, sometimes you don't want your gravity to reach 1.0, right? You want it to be a little bit sweet. So when it gets to like 1.010, you throw in the potassium metabisulfate, it kills all the yeast off, and it doesn't ferment dry. So that's a good thing. So you can kind of sweeten it, or you can let it go dry, which I don't like to do, and then add the potassium metabisulfate and then sweeten it up some. But anytime you do that, you can tell. So it's best to stop it when it's higher than to let it go dry and then try to back sweeten. But pasteurizing too, the heat can kind of affect the flavor somewhat because you got to get it up to like what 160 is it, Tim? So to kill everything off. Maybe not that hot though. If you're just killing off yeast, you're not killing a lot of bacteria. You shouldn't have those in there if you're doing everything sanitary. That's another thing that shiners do that winemakers don't, is they're not as sanitary conscious. That's why I think it's great for all distillers, if you're going to be serious about it, and have aspirations of going commercial. I think you should learn how to make beer from professionals. And if you're going to do brandy, I think you need to learn how to make wine from professionals. And that's what I did. I didn't ask any shiners. I hate saying it. I didn't ask any shiners their advice on making wine. I went directly to big winemakers, local winemakers, the internet. And take everything with a grain of salt. You got to really consider the source. There's a lot of information out there, and there's a lot of disinformation out there. So, but really learning from winemakers and beer makers is the best way to make whiskey and brandy. They, except, like in beers, they do the hops thing. So you're going to eliminate that. In the beers, they do a lot of protein rests and things like that to eliminate the haze that we don't worry about in distilling. So you're not going to be really that concerned about that. So there's some shortcuts you can make from the beer making processes, and the same with wine. We're not going to stop fermentation, like that, but we don't want it to go dry. So unless you're set up to where when it gets to that 1.005 or whatever, really close to 1.000, and it's got just a tad of sweetness left, if you're set up to run it immediately, that's great. But if you can't rack it off and run it, then it's going to end up going dry on you. So if you use the potassium metabisulfate, you can stop that. You can also, maybe at like 1.010, add what's called potassium sorbate. And that doesn't kill yeast. What it does, it makes your yeast go neuter. It neuters them so they don't reproduce anymore. So they just die naturally, and then they die out. They don't reproduce, so you don't have that cycle continue yeast production. So you can help things, get sweet that way by just killing off the yeast and letting them die slowly with less stress than killing them. Just let them die of old age and no reproduction. And that works pretty well too. Yeah, man, there's nothing like watching it. It's awesome. How to tell when you're done with the heads. Smell, touch, and taste. You'll know when you're done with the heads when you get rid of that acetone smelling. The more you do it, the more you know. That it's hard to explain it, but once you do it and experience it, the first couple of times may get a little choppy, but as long as you're making your cuts, in jars like this. Let's do this, Thomas. When you produce your still, let's do pints, okay? I'm not sure how big you are, but let's just say pints or half pints if you got a small still. Just collecting little half pint jars, little jelly jars, and just collect it all. And this number, 1 to 20, 30, ever how many you got. And then what you want to do is this figure, this is 30%, this is 40%, this is 30%. So what you want to do is you want to start here. So the very last, if you run it all the way down to nothing, which you should do anyway to maximize ethanol and to have some to run next time, because it's easy to separate this from the tails, the water of the tails and the congeners that are in here. It's easy to separate this in subsequent distillations. So you can dump it in your thumper the next time and get a lot of this ethanol out, right? And again, I think y'all can see my mouse. I wish I could see my screen. Maybe one of these days I'll set up where you can see my screen and you can see where I'm pointing at. But I'm looking at jars 15 through 20. You can see how much ethanol is in there, the blue. So those are good. You can rerun those and get that green out pretty easily. It separates easily. It's not going to taint the taste kind of like the blue does in the heads over here, because that acetone in your heads is a pretty strong. Um, I'm sorry, Richard. I did see that, and I skipped over. So I got to the ATF thing. That got my minds totally separated there for a second. I'll get right back to you, brother. But when you start sampling it, you want to start maybe to around jar 13, 14, 15, and start tasting those, and go to 16, 17 till it gets to the point where you can taste that musty taste, and it just, no, I don't, that tastes good. And then you can just save those for later. Put those in a bucket, right? And just label it tails. Okay. And then start going backwards, 15, 14. And then when you get to 13, 14, you're going to be like, wow, this is, I can see where I'm losing that musty taste. This is starting to taste pretty good. This is good stuff, man. This is good. So you go to 12, 11, man, this is still good. It's good. 10, 9, man, this is great. 8, man, this is good, but this tastes a little bit different. And then when you get to 7, it's like, I'm starting to taste something in there that I don't know. And then when you hit 6, 5, when you hit those those bottles 6 and 5, it's like, whoa, wait. This, yeah, this is getting a little bit much. So you can do it that way. But if you start tasting it like 5, 6, 7, that acetone gets on your taste buds, man. And I don't care about cleansing your palate. For me, you don't cleanse that shit off that easily. You're not going to take a swish of water and it be gone. No. So, and it's hard to taste 8 and 9 and 10 and find where it cuts off, right? So it's best to work backwards. Go ahead and jar it up. It doesn't matter. It's jarred. Nothing's going to change, and you're not going to hurt anything. So what it is, and you just start drinking backwards from 15, 16 backwards to 1 through 7, and then you'll know. When you get to jar 6 and 5, you'll know when you've hit jar 6 and 5 just by the taste. Now, what you can do while it's coming off is put your fingers over in that drip and let it drip on your fingers and smell. Rub your fingers. You want to spread that alcohol. What you're doing when you're rubbing your fingers, you're spreading that alcohol on your hands so it evaporates quicker, right? So, if it just stays wet on one spot, it doesn't evaporate so quick. But when you rub it, you're feeling the texture of it. You're feeling whether it's oily or clean. You know how clean things feel when you got like clean hair, and it catches and pulls, it's kind of squeaky clean, and versus oily hair, it just slides and glides through. Your fingers will do the same thing when you're squeaky clean in your ethanol versus getting into your tails. You can definitely feel those fusel oils on your fingers and stuff. So starting out, you go from kind of oily to clean to oily again. Smell wise, the same. You'll definitely be able to tell by the smell. So, and it's just something that you'll pick up over time. But as long as you've got these jars saved up from 1 to 20 like here, or 1 to 40, ever how much you produce, or 1 to 10, depending on how much you put out, you'll always be able to just taste it back and know what your best parts are, and where your tails are and where your hands are. And, I don't do anything with my hands. A lot of people do, no, and I'm sure there's some commercial distillers and some very knowledgeable people that'll say, now, there's some really good esters at this point right here in your heads. If you can isolate those, you're going to get good flavors, and that's a fact. There are some really good sweet esters, but it's hard to isolate them on the size stills that we run unless you're doing really small cuts. So if you're doing like shot glasses, you might be able to isolate that sweetness. Whereas on, like 100-gallon to 500-gallon still, that's going to be a half-gallon jug of that sweetness. Okay, so it's going to be a big difference, and it's going to be a lot easier to pick up on those. All right, now Richard's question. Scroll back, scroll back. I do remember seeing it. I got my mind on that ATF thing. Okay, so when we did the potato fermentation, we shredded them, steeped them all day. Checked conversions, it seemed good. But in a 5 gallon of water, it only hit 1026 with 15. Okay, Richard, you're going to have to maximize this. Potatoes. You have to cook your potatoes just like you cook any other grain. You have to gelatinize your potato. You get your starches out at 160. You take your potatoes to 160 degrees. Okay, and you can also, when you get a little cooler, you can add some sweet potatoes in at maybe 140. Cook those at about 145, 50, and that way you don't neutralize or denature your enzymes, because you'll have a lot of good natural enzymes in your sweet potatoes. But just regular old potatoes, yeah, you need to cook them, bro. You got to cook them up and get that potato gelatinized, get those starches released, and then you're going to add alpha amylase just like you would with the corn. And then, you let it cool all the way down to, 90s. You can add your glucoamylase just like we do with the grains and everything else. That's why you didn't get that conversion. So, yeah, you got to treat those just like it's is any other grain. So you got to cook them up, and let me see back where we're. Our second, yeah, wait, where'd it go? Okay, here we go. So yeah, cook them up. Use your amylase and your high temp alpha, and then use your gluco. And if you want to, at 130, you could throw in a little barley if you wanted to. Barley malt to get you some beta amylase in there to help break those down. But just your liquid alpha and liquid glucose would work fine. But if you want to, do a little bit of that, you can. Also, you need nutrients. Potatoes, I'm not sure. Let me see how much potatoes. This is something I've never. Yeah, I don't understand all this shit. They don't understand Yanifan. I have to break it down for the stupid AI. Yeast, assimilable nitrogen. Yeah, yeah, I don't think it does. Yeah, potato mash is known to be deficient in assimilable nitrogen, meaning it doesn't naturally provide sufficient yan for optimal yeast activity. So yeah, you need to add nutrients to it. I mean, it's just, a lot of people don't realize it, but you do that just like any other, man, just like any other, fruit or vegetable, except malted grains. So malted grains, you don't need the nutrients, but in most all your wines and all that. So it's best just to buy the damn DAP. Just get you a bag of DAP or Fermax or Fermate, Fermo, whatever floats your boat. Use those, and you won't ever have that problem again. Just don't use too much. So you did use the amylase. Okay. Yeah, next time cook them up. Maybe cook them a little longer. And you did use oats and nutrients. Awesome. Yeah, it's all a learning process, brother. I mean, you can't. The first time, don't ever expect anything to work out great the first time. Even if I'm telling you, it's always little things going to come up. So But I mean, I've talked to people that made poutines and potato stuff, and they weren't even adding using amylase. They were just cooking it up and getting whatever starches they could out of it, adding sugar, and basically making potato flavored sugar shine, I guess you could say. Um, so yeah, you got to break starches down just the same in all of it. I mean, green bean shine. If you want to make a green bean shine, you still have to, cook them up, get the starches out, and use amylase to help break them down. That does sound pretty good, green bean shine. But yeah, it's all a working process. Maybe cook them up more. What was maybe your potato to water ratio? Let's see. Does this have? I don't know if this does just fruits. I think there was another one that somebody put out that might have been a little better than this one. Who was it? Probably Chris and It's Time to Shine or Tougher. I can't remember who it was. Somebody put one out though that had has actually some more vegetables added to this list, and it was a little more extensive. Let's see if I've got that on hand. No, I don't see it. Wait. Oh, that is it. They're down here at the bottom, and I was hiding it. Yeah, I'm a fucking idiot. The last one didn't have this. It cut it off. My old chart had this right here, and it didn't have these, um, which is some vegetables and stuff. Oh yeah, I can't believe I was hiding that with the text. I'm getting fucking silly. But yeah, you got to convert those starches, no matter what it is, and break them down, to where they're fermentable. Yeah, damn. Can you waste those good homegrown green beans on shine, man? I love me some green beans. My grandparents used to do some heirloom beans, and they had a not white half rounder, but they had what they called a shucky bean and a greasy bean, and it was a specific heirloom green bean that they grew for many years. My grandmother, probably for 30, 40 years, always had a few jars of these green beans, and every year, out of what they grew, she'd keep a jar full and dry it out for the next year, right? Just kept doing that for years over. Man, those were, I don't even think you can get them anymore, man. They were so big. They were a big, wide bean. And, oh, man, they had such a best flavor. Miss my granny and miss her cooking, man. She was everybody knew her in Eastern Kentucky, in Pike County, for she's one of the best cooks. They had a little restaurant there back in the Depression days. She ran a soup kitchen and a little restaurant that fed a lot of the people in the city, hard times, East Kentucky, cold country. In the 30s and 40s, man, it was how a lot of people these days think people in the 1800s lived. It was even when I grew up in the 60s and 70s, it was, and it's still kind of behind the times today, man. It's a different way of life. It's a different way of growing up. Wouldn't trade it for nothing. For a wheat vodka, I wouldn't add sugar, brother. If you've used dextrose is such a great thing to use. It's expensive, but if you're using it to bump, it's not expensive because it doesn't take much, right? It dissolves readily, and the yeast love it. So it doesn't, you're not getting off flavors from using it. You're not going to get any crash issues, things like that. So I always keep some dextrose on hand. That's what I use for my grain to bump. It's just a bumper, and so you're not getting a lot of that bite. You're not going to get any of that bite. especially with the dextrose, um, which I highly recommend. There's a lot of other things like the cane. You get the cane syrup, the cane, but that's not, you can't just go out and get that, right? Dextrose. Phil Billy got an excellent line. If you can, if you're close to him and you can get it without paying shipping, it's cheaper than anywhere. Amazon is like $90 shipped for a 50-pound bag, and that'll last you a long time for just bumping your vodka up. And that's what I would do. I wouldn't do a 1040. I would bump that up. But you should be doing a little better with wheat. Even if it's just a solid wheat. Wheat tends to be sweet on the sweet side. How do you deal with the gumminess? I've never done an all wheat, but I do know when I get a lot of wheat and rye and barley and oats, it starts to get a little bit, when I get a higher percentage of those, starts to get gummy. And I wouldn't go 180. No, I wouldn't stretch it that far. I would take it 1040 to 1060 and or 1070. 1080 is a bit high. We were talking with the guy earlier. It gets a little body, and you're going to add a lot more. But yeah, I'd go to 1060, 1070 with some dextrose, and you won't notice a flavor issue at all. But is this a true vodka? I mean, are you distilling this to 190, or is it a good flavored vodka that comes off at about 160 to 80 that has a lot of good fucking flavors? It's not necessarily a neutral. I mean, I've made vodka that makes Tito's taste like trash. I mean, trash. And everybody loves Tito's. I can make Tito's look like trash. But, I didn't come off at 190 either. I carry flavor. So technically it wasn't a vodka. It was just a all grain, or not even I guess pure grain. I don't know what proof you have to come off of that. Absolutely. But yeah, I've got Tito's. I drank Tito's a lot. So got a little message, a little thank you. That's awesome. Yeah. Dragon's tongue beans. Now I'm not trying that. Corn sugars, that's good. Dextrose, about to say. Yeah. It's definitely for straight drinking. Yeah, I who knows what vodka tastes like, and when you mix it with orange juice and all these other different things, it's like it gets lost. But yeah, drinking it, straight. Um, yeah, I smoke Tito's. I make Tito's taste like trash. You should taste my vodka. It's awesome. And my grappa, probably the best you put your lips to. I'm sorry, Brian. Sorry, Brian Battle. He's a good guy, great guy, a great story, and he makes excellent grappa. Yeah, I can make some pretty good vodka. Definitely better than Tito's ever dreamed of. Yeah, it's nice. Every once in a while I get a thank you from people thanking me for taking out the time to help. Yeah, a lot of people think we're making money and that we're monetized and we're making money hand over fist like all these streamers and all this stuff. I've not made one penny from all the years in podcasting and helping and all the groups and stuff. I've never made a dime. Now, I will say I've never done any merch up to this point either, but we're going to do maybe a T-shirt or something to sell, and it's going to be again not something that I'm going to profit from, but I'm going to help pay for maybe the little heat press and stuff to make the the t-shirts with and stuff. And I got something big coming out that we'll talk about. It's going to be a month from now. We're going to introduce it at Philbilly. So yeah, absolutely, man. Absolutely. I'm just passing on what I've learned. You know, a lot of what I learned was the hard way, and I've learned a lot from other people. You know, all of my brandy and wine knowledge came from me talking to other people and winemakers and stuff. And I didn't get on podcasts. I couldn't find any wine podcasters, but I did, message back and forth with a few, and I visited a few locally and talked to them and picked their brains. And surprisingly, I did about as much as they did. There's one I may talk to and try to maybe go in partners and do a little a distillery maybe, because he makes some really really good wines, and I think they would maybe turn out to be some excellent brandies, or maybe learn to maybe make some brandies with their mistakes. Everybody makes those, right? And that's what, if you're a winery and you make mistakes, what do? Dump it? No, man. You need to have somebody there to take that and distill it, make a pretty good brandy with, because some really, that's what I do with a lot of my wine mistakes is they end up making brandy. It's it's the best thing to do with it. You're not going to dump them out. You can't remust them. You can redistill all you want, but you can't remust. You can't re-ferment. So I don't know. I guess maybe you could use wine, just dilute it out to another. I've never thought about that way, but I guess you could maybe, but I wouldn't. But yeah, this next week we're going to have a chart for all beginners, things that you need, and then we can go over. Again, we're not going to be here Saturday. I've got something going on, so I'm not going to be able to make it. Look for. I will make a post though about what I'm going to be doing this weekend. It'll be pretty interesting. Some of you guys may want to tune in. Um, but we'll be back. We'll be back next Wednesday. So I definitely will miss everybody this weekend. I hope everybody has a great weekend. And there's going to be some weekends that I miss. I know Philbilly has got a festival coming up July 11th and 12th, I think it is. I'm not going to be on that weekend. Maggie Valley weekend, I won't be on then. We may do some militia live streams. Yeah, it'd be a good Saturday. Give everybody a break, and I may post some info or something. I won't be going live, but maybe on in the militia or something, I'll make some posts, and maybe I'll post the sour mash steps and the equipment and things that you need to get started and have on hand. It'll be little things like having DAP, diammonium phosphate. I'll name it. I'll tell you how much it costs at Amazon. Now, I get a lot of shit from Amazon. I know if you've got some mom and pop brew stores locally that you want to frequent and give them your business, more power to you. I'm all about mom and pops. Um, I'm all about Amazon out of convenience and ease. I can sit my fat ass here and type it and boom, make it done. I don't have to get in the car, drive halfway across town and spend 2 hours doing something I can knock out in 15 minutes and end up, save money. But I'm all about that. If you got some mom and pops that you want to, I absolutely, and actually, July we're going to have Alan Bishop on. I need to make sure and check. Hopefully, we didn't schedule that for the same time that Hillbillies things going on, but I'll have to check that. But yeah, I've got Alan Bishop coming on, and he's a commercial distiller. Okay, I've done a little bit in aging, but I will say aging isn't something that moonshiners do a lot of. in the past? Never. You don't hold that evidence. You get that shit to your bootleggers, and it's out the door, and you're done. Right? It's not something that you age. So back in the day, no, I never really aged anything. I made it, I drank it, I got rid of it one way or the other. We won't talk about that on here, but now in the hobby craft, I've got a 15-gallon barrel upstairs. I got another 15 waiting on me at Philbilly's. I've got this bad mo barrel. I'll probably pick up one from West. Get me a sand motor going on with it. I doubt I do anything with that one because it's got everybody's autographs on it. Actually, this was passed around at Maggie Valley years ago. I signed it. This it wasn't mine. I bought this at an auction. It was somebody else's that they passed around to all the shiners and stuff and people in the industry, and we all shined it. There's a lot of there's a lot of master distillers, people from the show on here, and everybody. JB, I mean, Raider. There's a lot of autographs on that. So I don't think I'll use it because I don't want it to stain and ruin. So that's just gonna sit on my bar. But Alan, being a commercial distiller, has dealt a lot with aging, and so when we have that podcast, that would probably be a perfect time to discuss aging. So, Andrew, I urge you all, please, if you're on Facebook, look up Moonshine Militia. I mean, you can turn off notifications if you get tired of every time something gets posted, ding, 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 drive you crazy. But it's a great place to be, and we do announcements on there. So if anytime I have a special guest like Alan or somebody like that, like I had, Dan on a few weeks ago or last week, talking about farm to bottle. So anytime I have people on that I'll make a special notice that they're going to be on, and he's the perfect person to ask. I can answer a lot of questions, and I can do a podcast on aging, but it's not something that it's going to be a lot of information that I've learned and not put to practical use yet. I do know from the small barrels and from staves and spirals and that kind of stuff. I can tell you what I've done with that. But as far as like big barrel, never. I've never filled a 53-gallon barrel. Alan has done many. I mean, it's won prestigious awards in California and all over, double golds and all this stuff. So, we would definitely get on some more advanced topics when I have him on the show, and that's one of the reasons I want to have him around is for more advanced, question and answer type things. So, maybe once if I could, he's very, very busy. I know he's like me. He really loves helping and educating. He's got videos and stuff that he does. I think I'm not sure if it's like a live podcast that he does. He does a lot of videos and stuff though, and informational videos. He does questions. He'll do questions, but he has to do it on his own time. He can't. He's not able to, sit down nights a week from 8 to 11 and sit and talk and talk and talk. He's just too busy. He's got a lot. He's young. He's got a lot of oars in the water. He's got a lot going on. But he loves educating. I know he'd love to be able to do what I'm doing and could probably do it as well or better than I'm doing it, truth be told. But, not everybody has the time. So, that's where I come in. I'm not the most knowledgeable person on the topic, but I think I'm one of the most knowledgeable person on the topic that's willing to dedicate the time and effort for nothing, that there is out there. That's probably a fact. So, but maybe when Alan gets older, he can do the same shit I'm doing and do it better. Yeah, absolutely. They're very, very, very informative. Yeah. Yeah, Alan's a good friend, and when I have tough questions, that's where you been, Mark. Comes in here dragging in at 11 o'clock closing time. Nobody calling shots. Missed you, man. Yeah, I'm still going, brother. Both Morgans come in at where the hell you all been, Mark and Mark? Don't answer that. I don't want to know. Yeah, I'm still going, man. We're about done though. It's about 11. But yeah, there's a as far as aging goes, it seems like the smaller you get, the faster it can be. The wood to alcohol ratio, like if I stick a big ass stave in a quart jar, it's going to age really really quickly within like a week or two, and it does it so fast you have to watch it. You don't want it over oak. Spirals kind of the same way. Um, the half gallon, the gallon barrels, they go really quick too because you have a lot of wood to alcohol ratio. And the higher the wood to alcohol ratio, the faster it's going to do its thing. But you don't get those true notes from the wood that you would like a 4 year in a big barrel, or a 4 year in a sand mold, or a bad mold. So it's it's all according. You're not going to get the same flavors, but you get that good, smoky, vanilla, caramely flavor. It's just not near as good as what you'd get long term from a big barrel. Um, but staves, or Samo, bad motivator, or a Saman, he has his. They're the same thing. There's actually another company that does them out there. I'm not sure who they are. Um, Mark, I remember when Mark was soaking his barrel, to kind of help him out soak his barrel. He got a 15 just like Mike. Well, no, he got it from a different source, but same, just like the one I got, or the two I have now. But have you been taking a little sippy sip out of that every once in a while, Mark? Yeah, absolutely, Richard, for sure. And well, actually, the more they're used, the longer it takes before it starts over oaking. So if you get like a 1 gallon barrel that's been used once, and you fill it that 1 gallon, you're looking at a couple of months, and if that. And so after it's used twice, it might take a few months. And then after you've used it a third time, it may take 4 months. And after you use it 4 times, it may take a year. So, as you use them more, unless you can break them down, you know, scrape them clean and rechar them, there is a limited amount of time unless you really want to go long term. But with the staves, it's not, you're not getting the same respiration. You're not getting the alcohol respiring in and out with the temperature and weather and pressure changes that you would with the stave. 3 times, yeah. And then they sell them to some beer maker who makes their whiskey beers with it, or a wine maker who makes their whiskey wine, or whiskey ports, or whatever. There's both of them. Both industries like those barrels for the same reason. I know I'm trying to think of that, the bourbon beer. What's the name of that? Yeah, my nose is itching like crazy. Every maybe it's tickling from this fan blowing my mustache. What is that beer that Alltech makes? I have to come up with the idea, and I can't even think of the damn Alltech bourbon barrel beer, bourbon barrel ale. Yeah, Kentucky bourbon barrel ale. That actually, I had a big hand in coming out with that decades ago. I guess probably 20 years ago. I actually bought a building in Pikeville where I grew up that my family used to own, and put a distillery in there. It's called Twin Barrels. Dueling barrels, yeah. Twin barrels. Dueling barrels. Yeah, that's what happens to your mind. You get my age, you got to Google everything. You forget everything. Bought a new one. Well, that's what it takes to make a real bourbon. It's got to be new, brother. Definitely got to be a new barrel. But yeah, we'll definitely get in on that and some more advanced topics when Alan's on here. So, Anderley, definitely join the militia and look for that, because I'm sure that you'll have some questions that'll help you as far as aging wise. All right, guys, everybody, I guess we'll take us a final shot. Since I got two Morgans, I did 2 shots. Everybody have a great rest of your week, and hopefully all your mashes turn out well. If so, it wasn't my fault if they don't. But definitely look for my notice about what's going on this weekend, and try to catch that if you can. And if not, I will see you guys and gals in here next Wednesday, next Hump Day. So everybody have a great week and a great weekend, and we will see you all next week. Sign on and take care, and salute.